Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this online consultation briefing session on the Cannon Hill Park to Moseley section of cycle route that we're currently out to public consultation on. I should just introduce the people who are with me in the virtual room presenting and myself. My name's Rebecca Hawthorne. I work in Birmingham City Council's Transport and Connectivity Department, and I'm leading on the consultation element of this project. I'm also joined this evening by Alex Kernan, who works in our infrastructure projects team, who will talk us through the detail of the proposed design, and also by Sahar Khan and Halima Iqbal, who are behind the scenes running all the technical bits and pieces of this Teams live broadcast. And thank you also for joining us. You won't be able to come on screen and to talk during the session, but there is a Q&A box that you can pop any questions that you've got at any time into the Q&A, and we'll pick those up and we'll have a bit of an opportunity to answer those questions after we've had the presentations. So the two parts to the presentation. First of all, I'll do a little bit about setting the scene, the context, and how this route fits into the overall Birmingham cycle network. And as I say, Alex will take us through the detailed proposals, and then I'll remind you how it is that you can respond to the consultation, and then we'll have the Q&A. So the context into which we're building this cycle route. We're at a point in Birmingham where we know that we have finite amount of road space and finite capacity on our transport network, and with an increasing population and increasing car ownership, we need to take some action to make sure that our transport system is fit for purpose and can accommodate the trips that people want to make. And with the space that we have available, we know that all those trips can't continue to be made by car moving forward. We're also in a situation where a climate emergency has been declared, and very timely, with yesterday being the Transport Day at COP26. And we have illegal levels of air pollution in parts of our city, so we need to take action there. And those climate emergency and the pollution, air pollution issues are really what's driving the pace at which we need to make change to Birmingham's transport infrastructure. So to overcome this, we have recently adopted our Birmingham Transport Plan, which sets our vision for the overall transport network. But one of the key principles within that is prioritising active travel in local neighbourhoods, so that walking, cycling and other active travel become the first choice and the obvious choice for people when making short journeys within their local neighbourhood. We also have a daughter document to the Birmingham Transport Plan that is the walking and cycling strategy. And in that we set out that we have a key aim to make walking and cycling again an everyday choice for local journeys and for leisure activities, and as part of a safe and integrated transport network for Birmingham, and to make sure that we develop a great city for walking and cycling, providing safe infrastructure particularly, and also managing traffic and maintaining streets. And alongside that walking and cycling strategy, we publish our local infrastructure plan, which basically sets out where we want to make cycling and walking improvements in Birmingham as and when we have the funding to create a cohesive network of cycling and walking routes. Finally, with COVID and lockdown declared in 2020, there was a move from the government trickling down to local authorities to provide new temporary pop-up infrastructure for walking and cycling. The reason for that was during lockdown, people were doing a lot more walking and cycling, and we want to take that opportunity to lock in that positive behaviour and to enable people to continue walking and cycling more as lockdown eased and as we return to different ways of living. At the time, the government made available some emergency active travel funding, which we used for various pop-up and temporary cycle routes around the city. And we're now on phase 2 of that funding, which is just called Active Travel Fund, which we're using a lot of that money to make permanent various pop-up routes that we put in during early days of the pandemic, but also some opportunities to build some new bits of route, such as the one that we're talking about tonight. So why is cycling particularly a good thing? Why would we want to build cycle routes? These infographics are taken from our walking and cycling strategy, and I've just picked out a few key. There are more in the document itself, but looking at a few of the challenges and opportunities. So as I alluded to around the Birmingham Transport Plan, we have a lot of short journeys made by car. These are pre-COVID figures for all of this, I should just say on there. But at that time, 25% of daily car trips in Birmingham less than a mile, but you can cycle a mile in about 6 minutes. So it's an ideal swap for how you travel. We also had very low cycle use, in that 1% of people in Birmingham cycle to work, but we know that over 50% of Birmingham residents would like to cycle more, but we're looking for the right infrastructure and the right opportunity to do that. And as I said again, we have poor air quality, and every year in Birmingham around 900 early deaths linked with air pollution, and we have issues with carbon emissions, and walking and cycling are ideal ways to travel because there's zero carbon emissions as you go for a bike ride. You're not putting out any nasty pollutants. It's also looking at congestion and the more efficient ways of travelling. And again, pre-pandemic, we were looking at a loss of working time in Birmingham and Wolverhampton. I'm afraid we just had the figures for Birmingham and Wolverhampton, which is why those two are lumped together. But that was costing the economy around over £100 million per year. Whereas, the space of a bicycle is considerably more efficient than the space of a car, particularly if the car is only carrying the driver. And bicycles, back in 2019, I think that figure's from, we're taking 14,000 cars off Birmingham roads every day already, and there's massive potential to grow that figure. And finally, the sort of cycle infrastructure that we're talking about today, a lot of it, there's only one stretch that isn't in this proposal, is segregated infrastructure. So it's separate from pedestrians and from general traffic, so that the cyclists have that clear space to use. And the reason we want to do that is we know from the Bike Life reports, which is a piece of research that Sustrans do every couple of years, that 76% of West Midlands residents think that more cycle tracks along the roads, which are physically separate from traffic and pedestrians, would help them to cycle more. And 65% of West Midlands residents support building more of that kind of segregated cycle track, even if that means less room for other traffic. So that for us was a clear message that this is the sort of infrastructure that people who are maybe cyclists but haven't quite started yet, that's what might get them to feel able to start cycling in Birmingham. So the route that we're talking about tonight, and as I said, Alex will take us through the detail of how this works. So mine's just, my part of the presentation is just lines on a map, talking about where the route is. So just to set you a little bit in context, you've sort of got Moseley local centre roughly in the middle there, with the Ulster Road running down this side. On the left hand side, almost off the map, you've got Kershaw Road and Bristol Road just running up there. And over here you've got Cannon Hill Park, that sets you as to where we are. The section of route that we're consulting on in this consultation runs from the Cannon Hill Park entrance, which is the pedestrian and cycle entrance opposite Cannon Hill Road, I think it's called, running down Edgbaston Road, along Park Hill, which is a fairly quiet road already, and then down Chantry Road. There's a school on the corner of Chantry Road as well there, which is means we might get some good links for children to be able to cycle to school. Along Chantry Road down to the A435 in Moseley. At the same time, we've got this spur coming off on Salisbury Road, because what we're proposing to do there is to reduce the speed of Salisbury Road to 20 miles per hour limit, so that those cyclists who feel more comfortable sharing with general traffic have a better environment for that, because the traffic is slowed overall. That's also, we've had some looking at the statistics for accidents that happen on Salisbury Road. We think that there'll be a general road safety benefit for all road users there by reducing the speed limit. I'd like to then add in a few to this map, a few schemes which are either being built at the moment or in the pipeline, to show you how this section of route actually is really helpful for joining up various other things. This pink section up in the top left there is a scheme that is based kind of around the Pershaw Road Priory Road junction, which is long overdue for some upgrades for pedestrians crossing that road. But at the same time, we're doing a scheme which puts in more segregated cycle route along Edgbaston Road, and that's that early section of Priory Road, so that joins the route that we're talking about today up to the A38 blue route on the Bristol Road. And that scheme is literally being built as we speak. I think construction began this week, so they're starting to put together the site compound and to work on that, and that's due to be completed next summer. At the other end, we've recently concluded our consultation on the next phase of the Places for People in Kings Heath and Moseley scheme. What that's about is an area-wide treatment down in Kings Heath and Moseley, looking to reduce the dominance of cars on residential streets. So looking at making changes to those streets so that the only cars on those streets should be ones that are actually visiting the streets themselves. And in doing that, when keeping the area completely open for walking and cycling, it actually becomes a more pleasant environment to cycle in, even without any specific cycling infrastructure, because it's just quieter streets, fewer cars. So we're linking into that. It doesn't quite link in there. You've got a little red section here. And that section is, we have some proposals coming forward for that section of Moseley Local Centre about how we might fit in some cycle infrastructure and also some improvements and enhancements for pedestrians in that area. That consultation is one that is coming soon in the next couple of months, probably, so keep an eye out for that one. So that sort of links through. I appreciate there is a small gap there. I will come on to that in a minute. But that basically provides a direct link through from Moseley into the A38 cycle route, straight into the city centre, all the way through for an easy link. Oh, there we go, and I've got it on my next slide. So what I've added in here is existing cycle routes that are already built in the area. Blue marks off-road routes, so that's where they're not shared with cars, and orange is on-road routes where it is shared with cars. So you've got there, coming through Cannon Hill Park, you've got part of National Cycle Network 5, Route 5, the Ray Valley route, which also then underneath my title carries on into the city centre. And as I mentioned, you've got the A38 Blue route. That bit on Pershaw Road is a bit of shared footway on there, but again, it links in with that section. And then we have got a current link through to the Ray Valley route from Moseley. That's just on 20-mile-per-hour streets, so no specific infrastructure there, but it shows how that links up. And finally, what I'm adding in here is, I mentioned earlier our walking and cycling improvement plan, that our map of all the places we'd like to build cycle routes as and when we can afford it. And what I've done there is just added in all those dotted lines are routes that we'd like to put in the future. And I think actually, I've just realised, I think we have put in that one on Pebble Mill Road. I should have turned that solid because I think we've since built that. But these dotted lines sort of link us up through into Balsall Heath and just sort of continue to create the network. But what I'd say, this route that we're talking about tonight is a really great piece in the puzzle that really does just fill it in and just makes sense to be able to link Moseley through to that blue route on the A38. So that's it from me on the initial context setting. So I'm going to hand over now to Alex, who'll talk us through the details of the proposal. Thanks, Alex.
Hi all, my name's Alex Kernan and I'll be talking through the proposals, as Rebecca says. So I'm just going to share my screen now so you can all see the plans. Okay, so hopefully you can all see this now on my screen. So obviously Rebecca's talked through the plans that tie into our scheme. So I'm going to start at the end of the route where we connect onto the Pershaw Road scheme. That's currently being constructed on site and, as Rebecca said, started this week. So we should start seeing some movement on this. So it'd be nice to tie into the route to create a clear link between Priory Road all the way through to Moseley, so it provides better connectivity into the city. So just looking at the plans here, what we're planning to do is we're proposing a segregated route almost all the way from Priory Road, the Edgbaston Road, all the way towards Moseley. It's shown in blue at the moment, but that's just for indicative purposes, so you can clearly see where the cycle track's being proposed. We're only planning to do blue where we've got points of interest where vehicles will need to sort of be more aware that there's cycling facilities across junctions and crossings, just to highlight an additional hazard or crossing point, just so it makes it clear for vehicles. So just starting at the end here, so as you can see, our cycle route is proposing to tie in with the end of the Priory Road route with the segregated two-way cycle track, which crosses over from the park, the Cannon Hill Park access. This will be at pavement level, so level with the footway. We are planning to build out the curb line slightly just to accommodate the cycle route and also pedestrian facilities in the area, so you've still got footway space. We've kept the bus stop away from the cycle route completely at this point, so there will still be room for passengers to queue and alight on the bus stop. So just moving round, we've got a continuous stretch of the segregated cycle route. We then come into an area of shared use where pedestrians and cyclists can use this area here, just because it's particularly wider and there's a lot of visibility around here. We've then got a tiger crossing proposed across Russell Road for cyclists and pedestrians, so they will be able to cross the road here and have priority. We're then proposing to extend out the footway again on this corner, just to create a little bit of extra space here for pedestrians and cyclists again, so that just gives a little bit more room and visibility for everybody. So continuing on Edgbaston Road, at this point we then come into another area of segregated cycle route in both directions, and there will still be the permitted footway space as it is currently. What we will do is we will narrow down the road at this point, just because we need that extra bit of space for the cycle track. So this stretch of road will actually just be for having cars going in one direction, so we won't have two lanes as we approach the roundabout at the top here, as it is currently, because we're building out the footway along this section. At the end of this section, we then come into another shared area where we've got pedestrians and cyclists, just for a short section. If you are a cyclist that use Salisbury Road, there is a provision where you can actually rejoin the footway where it's shared space, so you can access and egress from the cycle route. We've then got another tiger crossing just to get cyclists across to the opposite side, little bit of footway extension for some shared use along here, and then another tiger crossing to get cyclists onto Park Hill for the advisory route. So obviously there's an existing modal filter, so bollards and a curbed build out here. What we would be proposing to do is just make some adjustments to the existing build outs there, so that cyclists can easily access and egress along Park Hill. So that's that part of the plan. Just scroll down. I'm showing Salisbury. So I'll just continue on the Park Hill section. So going back onto Park Hill, we are continuing the advisory cycle route along Park Hill. So that will just be on the carriageway or road level. There won't be any segregation here, just because it's quite a quiet road through this section, so we feel that that's adequate along this section. We then come towards the junction of Chantry Road, where we're planning to introduce a segregated cycle lane in both directions, and that's separated by a solid curb, which I will show you an example of here. So as you can see, just a little photo there of the solid curb there. So that's going to be along the length of Chantry Road. The thing to bear in mind here is that obviously there are accesses to properties along this route, which obviously will be accommodated, so there will be gaps in the curbs to allow residents to access and egress their properties, so that will not be an issue. So Chantry Road as a whole will become one way as opposed to a two-way route, as shown on the image below. And obviously there's a segregated bidirectional or two-way cycle track the whole way through. Again, as I say, it was shown in blue, but this is just for illustrative purposes only. So the route will just be white lined and segregated with a curb, as I say, with gaps to allow accesses. And that follows the whole route down all the way into Moseley High Street. So it ties in just at the end at the junction of Alcester Road here. So the proposal on this corner here for the two-way cyclist ends, where the cycle track ends and you can access Moseley, will be picked up as part of the Moseley Local Centre Plan. At the moment, we're looking at allowing cyclists to access an area of shared use at the very end of Ulster Road, and then there would be possibly a cycle route on one of the sides of the road, but the details of that need to be well, we're still in discussion on the details of that proposal, but it will be coming forward for a consultation soon. Okay, and then just looking at Salisbury Road. Sorry, just flipping back on the plans. There we go. So Salisbury Road, we've proposed a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit on Salisbury Road, all the way along, all the way up to Edgbaston Park Road. So that will become a 20-mile-an-hour route, just because it makes it a little bit safer for cyclists, and it makes it a bit more comfortable for cycling along that route, and it just provides another element of connectivity into the Pershore Road scheme, and that is the plan.
Thank you.
Pass you on to Rebecca.
Yeah, I should just flip back to my screen share. Skip the right. There we go. So that's my final slide is just a summary of how you can give your feedback to this consultation. Primary way of responding is online via the Birmingham Be Heard website. The address is there, and we'll also share this information. We'll send you an email after the after the event with a link to the recording, which will also have a link to the main consultation site. If you do have any questions about the scheme, then you can email us in our connected mailbox, but that's really sort of questions and clarifications. If it's your actual response, then we prefer that you put it through to Be Heard. That's a lot easier for us to analyse. People can also write to us if they want to, but I'm going to go from the fact that you're attending an online briefing with the fact that probably you do have access to the internet. So I've just popped the web address on there for you. We've also got a drop-in event, which I have not updated the information for. I apologise. The drop-in event is next Wednesday at Moseley Exchange, next Wednesday between 4 and 7. I apologise. That's the drop-in session for details for the A48. I will A45 session. I will update that shortly. At the same time, we are consulting on some other cycle routes, which we have funding again through the Active Travel Fund. These are 3 cycle routes which we've put in pop-up infrastructure during COVID, and we're now looking to make permanent the infrastructure and to improve it as we go along. That's 3 sections of route. The section on Bradford Street in the city centre. Directly linked to that, there's a route out from Bradford Street to Small Heath Park. We're calling it the A45 corridor because it basically runs parallel to the A45 but not on the A45. And then we have a link from the city centre out to City Hospital. Again, we're calling it the A457 corridor. It's not actually on the A457 Dudley Road. It runs sort of parallel through the Jewellery Quarter, out across the Ring Road, and down sort of past the canal, with a bit of a link onto the canal and to City Hospital. And there are links to all those consultations on our website, birmingham.gov.uk/ATF cycle routes, ATF being Active Travel Fund. So I think now we can come over for some questions from what we've had in the chat. I see there's been quite a few. I think looking at what they've been, I think they may be mainly for Alex, I'm afraid. So Alex, you might want to be ready with your screen share again if you need to look at specific parts of the plans.
Yes, no problem.
Sahar, I think, is going to bring us some questions.
Okay, so the first question we had was, why should there be a segregated cycle lane on a road with almost no traffic on it?
Okay, so obviously we're proposing the Chantry Road route just because it's a nice connection from Moseley High Street into the new Priory Pershall Road scheme. So I'll just share my screen again. And obviously it does get quite sort of busy around peak times as well, so it's just a nice alternative for people who are perhaps using the school to pick up their children. So it gives another link to like a different active travel to pick your children up. It also provides a nice connective route to the city centre for work or for social events and things like that. So we've picked that route just because it feels safer as well for cyclists who are not as experienced to use Chantry Road as an alternative. So that's really why we picked this route.
The next question is, why will drivers keep to 20 miles per hour on a fast road like Salisbury's Road?
So we're hoping that drivers will adhere to the 20-mile-an-hour route. They should be adhering to the speed limit because that will be part of the traffic regulation order, and obviously they should be adhering to the highway code, and if it's shown as a 20, they should really be sticking to it. We can look at ways to make the 20-mile-an-hour adhered to, maybe by doing some sort of alternative measures to slow people down. So it's something that we could look at just to make sure that people are actually adhering to the new speed limit. So I can take that one away. Yeah,
what we try to do with 20-mile-per-hour limits in the city is that we are looking for them mostly to be self-enforcing, in that, you know, drivers driving at 20 do keep that, you know, keep others down at that limit, but we keep an eye on where there are hotspots of speeding and work together with West Midlands Police to do sort of targeted enforcement if there are particular issues. So there's a few places around kind of Moseley that we have done that in the past. We've also got quite a lot of resources on our website that can be used kind of in the community by local residents if they have concerns about speeding close to their homes. So there's various sort of toolkits and things that we can do, and we can work sort of with the local community to try and bring that speeding down. So.
Okay, so the next question is, the cycle lane appears to be a fixed cycle lane rather than advisory, which means that except for emergencies, it can't be accessed by motor vehicles. So please can the council explain how residents to the south side of Chantry Road can arrange for heavy loads to be made, such as building materials, bricks, skips, etc. And because of the nature of those deliveries, will people be permitted to park across the cycle lane and make their delivery, or is the concession going to be around for residents?
So, well, as Alex said, there'll be gaps in the curb for access to properties. So if delivery vehicles, you know, need to come onto driveways, then they can do that. Or, you know, if they're dropping off a skip, something like that, onto somebody's driveway, they can make that crossing. If it's just a, you know, general sort of delivery to the area, then there is space on the other side of the road still for parking to carry on. I don't know whether that covers the whole of the question, whether Alex has anything to add.
Yeah, I think you've covered that there, to be honest. So they'll be parking to the northern side of Chantry Road. If anybody needed to make a small delivery, I suppose, but larger deliveries, yes, they'd still be able to access through the cycle route with the gaps within the curbs.
The next question is the route of the cycle route a done deal, or is the council open to alternative routes?
From looking at the other roads off Moseley High Street, this was the best option for the cycle route. Just given from data that we have on file and records, we feel that Chantry Road is actually the most suitable route for cycling. So any feedback on and any sort of changes to the scheme is welcome, but this is the preferred route for the bi-directional cycle route.
Thank you. Is the cycle path going to be at road level or built up to pavement level?
So it will be at road level along Chantry Road, and then on Edgbaston Road it will be at pavement level.
Residents on Upper Park Hill seem to have missed out on plans and a letter from the council. Was that intentional? Because Upper Park Hill will experience greater traffic flow if Chantry becomes one way.
No, we've used various ways to tell people about the consultation. So we've done a letter drop to properties within at least 50 metres of the proposed route, although actually I went a little bit further than the 50 metres. We've also put some on-street big yellow signs out that indicate to people that the consultation is happening, and we're promoting the consultation through various channels of the City Council, regular emails that the council sends out, social media, etc. And we also put out a press release which has been picked up by I think a couple of news outlets. So we've used a variety of means of letting people know about the consultation. The letter drop was only one way to alert people. It's always difficult to know where to begin and end your letter drop for any given scheme, but find the balance. But in this case, we went for those that were within at least 50 metres of the scheme, and in practice a little bit further. But we welcome views from anybody who'd like to give us their views, not limited to those immediately on the route.
Thank you. And the next question is that stated in Birmingham Cycle Revolution paper, cycle tracks do not eliminate the risk of left-turning vehicles striking cyclists. So how does the council square the clear risk with a cycle track along a reasonably narrow residential road into which residents will typically turn left in? In addition to that, how does the council propose that those residents who have to reverse off their drives, a lot of them with downward sloping drives, and blind views due to trees, walls and hedges, navigate across a pavement and a two-way cycle track into a road safely? So the concern is that cars traversing Chantry Road tend to stop when cars are reversing into the path, but not all cyclists do this, and they can't be seen easily.
So again, that's probably one that we need to drill down to in the detail. We have looked at this street just from a visibility state, and also just looking at how the road functions. So we are aware that there are driveways along the whole length of Chantry Road, and it is something that we need to look into further in the detail. But we will ensure that the visibility isn't compromised before implementation of anything.
I think the other thing to note on that, I think the question when it was talking about the risk of left turning vehicles striking cyclists was talking about left turning across the cycle lane into driveways. I think the thing to note there is that the frequency with which that will be happening is relatively low. That's one or two vehicles accessing a driveway. That's not a regular left turn with hundreds of vehicles an hour. So actually the relative risk there is fairly low, and it will be mainly residents turning into their driveways who will be very familiar with the road layout once it's in and established, and so we'll be aware that there may be cyclists on the route.
Thank you. Another question's around drainage. So existing drainage will be affected, and how is the council dealing with that?
So again, that would be another thing that we'd look at during detailed design. So we would look at all the levels and assess any changes to drainage, etc. We may leave some gaps in the curbs as we have done with the 838 route, the blue route in the city centre. So it might be that we do something like that, but we will look at drainage as a whole during detailed design.
Thank you. Another question is, does the council propose that the entire length of Chantry Road be made subject to a residence permit parking scheme only? And does the council also propose that residents may be permitted to extend their drives by removing walls and other bits without requiring planning approval or conservation?
Yeah, shall I take that one? So in terms of residence parking, looking at the nature of the housing on Chantry Road, most of the houses there have got off-street parking. So whilst we're making sure that there is access to driveways, we are working on the basis that residents themselves will probably have that off-street parking and won't be looking to park on street, so that the parking that takes place on street is mainly going to be visitor parking, so that actually a reduction in that is not going to have a great impact on the residents' ability to park. It will only be visitors that are affected and may make it a less attractive option for visitor parking, which may in itself potentially be of benefit if people parking from Moseley local centre don't think Chantry Road is a good option. The other question then was about making changes to properties without needing approval. No, any changes that you make that would need planning, conservation, etc. approval will still need that same levels of approval. We don't have the power to make any changes on that side of how the council operates. You'd still need full permission.
Thank you. Will the cycle only surfaces be blue and not black like the roads? And like all of them?
No, they won't be blue in this section. They will remain black, like the tarmac on the carriageway or road, if you like. So we are proposing that we will install road markings, so it's clear that it is for use for cyclists only, rather than as part of the carriageway for vehicles. So it will become clear.
The blue surfacing that we've used on the other routes is very nice looking, very attractive, and does make a really good route. But what we've discovered is that actually the maintenance costs of those blue surfaces are quite high. So actually, if we can just use those blue as Alex mentioned, those kind of points of potential conflict where vehicles need to be particularly aware that they are crossing a cycle route, for the sections that are fully segregated, it's still a comfortable cycling experience if it's not blue, and we can, means that the ongoing maintenance costs are not as high. We can stretch the budget a bit further, potentially make more cycle routes in future.
Thank you. Another question is about the tiger crossing. Is that like a zebra crossing for bikes, meaning cars are required to give way?
Yes, so cars would need to give way at tiger crossings to both pedestrians and cyclists, as you would with zebra crossings.
Thank you. About opening the bollard space, won't this allow dangerous drivers to cut through driving across the pavements?
No, so we will ensure that it's only permissible for cyclists to go through that modal filter there. So we will ensure that there's either a build out or a bollard or both in between each lane of the cycle track, just so that it gives that little bit of a separation so that vehicles aren't tempted to go through there, and it's only dedicated to cyclists. So we will iron that out in the detailed design.
Thank you. Question is, how many cyclists use Salisbury's Road currently? Do they have a better alternative?
So cyclists do use Salisbury Road and Chantry Road as a route currently. Sorry, could you repeat that question again? Sorry, Helene.
Yeah, how many cyclists use Salisbury Road currently, and do they have a better alternative?
Don't know whether we've got. I might have to take that one away. Apologies.
Okay.
Unless Rebecca, can you?
I don't know whether we've got any figures on there. I know you were looking at kind of accident statistics, particularly, weren't you there? I don't think we have any cycle counts on there at the moment. But with routes like this, it's not necessarily about making provision for cyclists who are already there. It's about creating the infrastructure that enables more people to cycle. It's a little bit, if you build it, they will come. Not quite that flippant, but it is a case that if there's no cycle infrastructure, then we don't get many cyclists. We do get some who are happy to mix with the traffic, but fairly low levels. By building safe, segregated infrastructure, that's what people tell us it will take to enable them to cycle. So that's why we build the routes. In terms of alternatives, I think Alex already answered a question about why Chantry Road was the one chosen over other local roads in terms of looking at the various data we had around sort of traffic counts and accident data, and picking what was felt to be the best route. And also having the school on Chantry Road is a nice opportunity to create a safe cycle route to that school.
Would the council propose that traffic lights or a roundabout be included on the Alcester Road to alleviate the exit headache in regards to the tailback along the roads after it becoming one way on Chantry Road? So Chantry Road will be made one way.
So is that talking about the traffic that would have exited from Chantry Road onto Ulster Road and now has to do it on Park Hill, the next one up? I think, is that what the question is?
Yes, so no, the traffic lights or roundabout would be included on Alcester Road because they have to exit from Park Hill to Alcester.
So it's, would we think of any treatment of the junction of Park Hill and Ulster Road as part of this scheme?
Yeah.
Right. I understand the question now. I'm not sure I know the answer. I think the answer is probably not. I don't know whether we've looked at what the potential additional load would be on that junction, but I suspect that we wouldn't look at doing any additional treatments there. But as is often the case, we'd look in the detailed design at what figures we had around what additional load there might be on that junction. Alex may have something to add.
That is what we would do. So we would have a look at what the capacity would be like once we install the cycle lane, and obviously possibly wouldn't do any treatment particularly for traffic, but we would look at it in the detail.
Is there any traffic calming planned for cycles on Park Hill? Because as it's already steep, sometimes they come at speed.
So it's around slowing the bikes down rather. So on Park Hill, the cycles will be on the road, so they will be subject to the speed limit of the road, which I think is 20 miles per hour on Park Hill, but I'm sure Alex will correct me if it is.
Yes, it's 20.
Yeah. So they are subject to that speed limit. No, we wouldn't generally put any traffic calming on there because you're not going to get that many bikes doing great speeds. And actually, in terms of road safety, the risks if struck by a cyclist, if a pedestrian is struck by a cyclist, yes, it can result in serious injury and death. But actually, compared to if a pedestrian is struck by a car at the same speed, the risk is a lot lower. So we wouldn't generally put in traffic calming specifically for cycles on Park Hill.
Thank you. Will there be a risk of cars parking on the cycle lane if it's actually tarmac coloured?
So again, we would look at this in the detailed design to ensure that the cycle lane is only used by cyclists. So we would use bollards. Obviously, there's a segregated curb, etc. So we just need to have a look at that in the detail to ensure that cars can't park in the cycle lane because they're not permitted to do so.
Alex, would we do a traffic regulation order so there were double yellow lines there as well?
Yes, we would possibly look at that as well.
Which, if we did, would mean that enforcement officers could go and take action if cars parked in the cycle lane.
Yes.
The next question is, how are you going to ensure that residents only can use the remaining 50% of parking that's available on the north side of the road? Because it's currently used for free parking by shoppers, pub goers, anyone going into town. So will you be doing patrolled residents parking day and night? And how will you prevent residents' drives being parked over, which already happens without the reduction in space?
So again, as discussed before, we wouldn't be looking at putting in a residents parking scheme. If residents do have problems with vehicles obstructing their dropped curb, their driveway access, they can contact the council for enforcement. There's details on our website of how to contact the council if you effectively can't get off your driveway because somebody's parking in front of that. Yeah, and in terms of, you know, sort of visitor parking from Moseley's local centre, as I said, perhaps if the capacity is reduced, then people will be put off using Chantry Road, potentially knowing that there isn't a lot of space on there for parking. But one of the key areas, again, of the Birmingham Transport Policy, Birmingham Transport Plan, is looking actually at managing demand through parking measures and looking to make sure that in, you know, places like local centres there isn't ample free parking, because if you provide a lot of free parking, it's very easy to park close to where people are going. It means that people are much more likely to travel by car, and actually what we want people to be doing is travelling by more sustainable means. So we would far rather ensure that the bus service to the local area, obviously with the train station coming to Moseley, these new cycle routes, ensure that those alternatives are really high quality and are a natural choice for people, so that leaving the car at home, or perhaps even not owning a car, is a much more normalised action going forward. We reduce the volume of cars on the road.
Thank you. Another question is, has a risk assessment been taken for cyclists coming up the wrong side of the road and turning into a really busy road, with reference to Chantry and Alcester Road?
So Chantry and Alcester Road, where the cycle track currently ends, on the plans, there will be a further connection onto the Alcester Road High Street. So there will be a further connection point onto the High Street there. So cyclists won't actually be facing the traffic in the opposing direction. They will be brought onto the footway for an area of shared use in the forthcoming proposal. That will be consulted on in the coming months. So yeah, the proposal will be coming forward shortly, which will address that issue.
Thank you. The next question is, how do we report illegal parking or obstructive parking blocking in or out residents from their drives? The online reporting isn't actioned immediately, and your wardens don't work on evenings and weekends.
I'm going to take that one away and get back to you, if that's all right. If you want me to reply directly to you, if you can just drop your email address into a comment, which we won't publish for everyone to see, but if you can just drop that in there, then we'll get back to you on that.
Another question again was in reference to the lorry delivering scaffolding or bricks. So one of the first questions we had about heavy loads. So they want to know how it will deliver it when it can't park alongside the house to which it's delivering. It's highly unlikely to be able to reverse fully onto the driveway of the house to which it's delivering and make that delivery without blocking the cycle track. I think because they're referencing quite big lorries.
I would have to ask, how often are people having big bits of work done on, you know, thinking about the size of the road and the frequency with which that's actually going to be a problem. And actually, there's an awful lot of roads in the city where there isn't really space if a large vehicle came and needed to stop in the road to make deliveries. So I don't think that's going to be a unique issue to Chantry Road, and I don't think it's going to be one that comes up particularly frequently. It may be that, you know, the vehicle has to stop briefly in the road because that's what there's space for. If we hadn't put the cycle route in, then there would potentially still be parking on both sides of the road. No guarantee that a large vehicle could pull up outside the right property that it's making deliveries to, so may equally be stuck blocking the road to make that delivery for a short time. I think it's kind of going to have to be one that, you know, that's life, that happens, but actually the frequency with which it happens is fairly low.
And I think that's pretty much all the questions. There was some duplicate ones talking about the same stuff.
Okay. Just maybe give a moment then if anybody wants to add any additional questions, or if you feel that there's anything that, you know, need clarification on or that we haven't covered, then I'll just give a moment or two. I'm just going to take us back to my screen share as well, because I can pop us back onto that slide with the information about how to respond to the consultation, which I have now corrected to put the correct date and location for the drop-in event face-to-face, which anyone's welcome to come along to. No appointment needed for that one. We have said, obviously, if any COVID restrictions do change, we may not be able to run the face-to-face events, but that one's only a week away, so we're quite hopeful on that one. that we will be able to go ahead.
We've had one more new question, and that's, will you be traffic calming with the one-way system?
On Chantry Road, is that presumably?
I think so, yeah. It hasn't specified a road, but
it's not on the proposal, no. So it would just be the straightforward one-way system. Obviously there'll be a cycle track as well in the road or carriageway, so that should be a self-enforcing traffic calming measure.
the next question is, will the cycle lane be swept of leaves?
Yes, it will. Yes, that will form part of our maintenance.
Okay, so one question hasn't been answered, and that was the question asking why Salisbury Road was rejected as a dedicated lane.
So that's why we didn't put the segregated lane on Salisbury Road and put it on Chantry Road, I think.
Yeah, I think we did answer that right at the start, but
have a recap from Alex.
Yeah, so the reason why we chose Chantry Road rather than Salisbury Road is that it is a quieter road. It's more comfortable for those who are starting out with their cycling commutes, etc. And it's just a nicer route through there in terms of traffic, particularly as we can turn Chantry. We're looking to introduce a one-way section on Chantry Road. It's a nicer route for children and parents if they want to do the pick up and drop off for the school. And again, looking at the traffic accident data, etc. On Salisbury Road, again, that just sort of gave us our judgment on choosing Chantry Road as the preferred option. Hopefully that answered the question.
Thank you. Anything more, Sahar, come in?
So just in terms of the delivery one, again, I think they want the cycle track to become advisory, just to like mitigate that issue. So I think that's what they want us to consider.
Okay, so if it was a advisory cycle track, the reason we do want to do the full segregated cycle track is back to that slide I had in terms of when we talk to people and say, you know, what would encourage you to cycle more, what would encourage you to take up cycling, loud and clear people say to us, what we want is to be segregated so that we're not having to share the space with cars. And if it's an advisory cycle track, well, if it's at the same level as the cars, even if it is one with a solid white line, it means that there is still a much greater feeling of vulnerability for sort of newer and younger cyclists, so it's not as attractive. And if it's genuinely an advisory cycle track in that it has a broken line and vehicles can enter it, then it doesn't really give any protection at all to cyclists. It's not a lot better than them just having to share the road space without any facilities at all. So that's why we're looking to put in the segregated route. Of course, if it was a solid white line, you wouldn't be allowed to park in it anyway, because the vehicle wouldn't be allowed to cross it. So that doesn't actually help the parking issue. It would only have to be that, you know, that truly advisory dotted line, which, as I say, is very little protection for cyclists.
Another question's come in saying, why does if the road's already quiet, why does it need a dedicated cycle lane if it's already easy enough to cycle there?
Again, it's for the less confident cyclists who want to get into cycling, and particularly children, just to add that added protection so that they can commute as well to and from school with their families. So it just provides a nice alternative for active travel and sustainable travel.
And it's about creating that network as well, that people, you know, we're gradually trying to create that, you know, go anywhere network for cycling. And this fills in, as I said, that nice gap that links us up to the Ray Valley route and to the A38. Because the last thing we want is, you know, a family living in Moseley or somebody living in Moseley wanting to commute to the city centre feeling like, well, actually, I've got most of a route. It can do, you know, 80% of what I need to do, but actually that 20% that doesn't have those facilities for me, that's going to put me off for the whole journey. I'm not going to start cycling there. We do need, through, you know, as we demonstrated through our walking cycling strategy, to have a joined up cohesive network. So it's building pieces of it, which feels a bit like pieces of jigsaw puzzle and feels a bit like, well, why are you just doing this bit here? But actually, when it looked at, oh, excuse me, bumping into my glass, when it looked at in the context of where we're trying to achieve that network, I think it makes sense to put the link in there through to the A38.
Thank you. Okay, so the last question is that the road is a conservation area and houses are all wooden. So I think it's just more of a statement, really, just to say why upkeep is so important with the builders and workmen.
So that's probably in response to my comments about how frequently building work happens. Then
yeah. So I think that's been addressed.
Yeah, and we'll take that under advisement. As I say, we'll have a look at what's possible when we're drawing up the detailed design about making space. And what I would encourage everybody, even if you've been on today and we've heard some of your feedback and some of your questions, I would really still appreciate if you'd fill in the online consultation so that we've got your views kind of all together in one place, and then we can look at that all together, take on board all the comments that we've had. That's really useful for us if you put in a formal consultation response. So please do include that issue if you're a resident of Chantry Road who's going to have a lot of deliveries.
Yep, and there's no more new questions.
Okay, good. That's probably us to do then. So nicely, just in under an hour. So thank you very much, everybody, for your time, for joining us this evening. We will, I think there was a question there about will we be publishing the recording of this session? We will, yes, that will appear online, linked from the consultation webpage, and we'll drop you an email to let you know when that is online, in case you haven't had enough and want to go and listen all over again. But also if you'd like to share with any friends and neighbours who haven't been able to make the event tonight, they'd be very welcome to come along and listen, and also to come along to the drop-in event next week at the Moseley Exchange, and to view all the information, of course, that's online there. So thank you everyone for coming along, and we will leave it there. Good evening.